Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Mason. Sorry for the late start. We are experiencing some technical difficulties again. The novice vlogger. But as we get Sharad online here, I'm happy to take questions. So far, I think this has gone really well. We've gotten good response. A lot of people interested in the companies and the founders that we're featuring. Gotten a lot of requests from people as well. So that's been encouraging. To set the stage for this interview, traumatic brain injury is very prevalent. It's actually, I learned getting ready for this call, it is the number 4 cause of death in the US. And there are apparently 18 million traumatic brain injuries worldwide, according to the World Health Organization. So I know it from a sports perspective, but there's a lot more to it than just us banging into each other on the court or on the football field. I think a lot of recognition was given to it after the movie Concussion and all the CTE stuff with the NFL, and just knowing how we diagnose concussions in the NBA. When I met Sharad and his team at BioDirection, I thought it was a really neat solution, something that's really needed in the sports arena, and ultimately it'll have tremendous value in the emergency rooms and hospitals as well. So just so you guys know, when we think we have a concussion or we hit our head really hard in practice or games, as NBA players, at least with the Nuggets, what we do is a baseline test before the season. We have flashcards, basically playing cards, and they test our recognition of, have we seen the card before or not. So we sit at a computer for 5 minutes and they run a bunch of different tests. Click if it's red, don't click if it's black, click if you've seen this card before. And then what happens when you bump into somebody in the game, you go back to the computer, you take the same test, and they basically compare it to your baseline test preseason. So it's a method. I don't think it's the best method. I think our sports science guys are great with the Nuggets. I think our staff is second to none, but this is a solution that I think ultimately will help not just our team, not just our sport, but everything from youth sports on up. And I was actually interested to learn that 40 to 45% of TBI is slips and falls. So not people out competing, but rather just elderly people or uncoordinated people slipping on sidewalks, ice, downstairs, whatever the case may be. So hopefully we can get Sharad here in a second. Okay, so somebody asked, can you talk a little bit about some of the medical technology that you've gotten interested in, invested in, and what's the use in the league? So what powers this BioDirection diagnostic is a nanotechnology. And there's one other nanotech company that I invested in using semiconductors to achieve ultrasound imaging. So that was my introduction to medical device. That's a company called Butterfly Network. You might have seen it on my social media. I've done some fun stuff with them, but that company excited me because they took an insight into people's body that normally costs anywhere from $50 to $1,000, and they afforded it to people in one full body scanner and a probe that's today $2,000, and they hope to achieve an even lesser price point. So Butterfly is a super cool company. You can check them out. They've actually been very helpful during the pandemic because they can look at people's lungs and diagnose if they need further testing. So it's exciting to me. One of the things when I was introduced to that company, they said that 70% of the world has never had access to medical imaging, and it was their mission to afford that to them. So you can really only do that through price point, and that's what they're able to do, replacing piezoelectric crystals, which resonate the image in the $50,000 to $100,000 machine, and replacing that with semiconductor technology that can resonate a like image. Let me see if we have Sharad here.
Hi, Mason.
Sharad, welcome.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad you're on because I was running out of things to talk about.
Okay.
And people don't want to hear me talk. They want to meet you. I can promise you.
Well, I hope I don't disappoint.
No worries. So are you able to turn your camera on so we can see you?
Yes, I thought it was on. So, okay. Let's see, because I can see myself there.
Okay.
It's now in HD.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, we're good to go.
All right, good. And my background's okay, lighting's okay.
Everything's good. We might have 10, 20 viewers, hopefully more. But
Okay.
thanks for joining us. And what's neat about this is we do end up recording it and reposting it, so then it gets shared and a lot more people view it. So
Great.
well, with the late start, let's just jump right into it. I gave a little preface to your company, but if you could just explain to us, what TBI is, and then what the current solutions for the diagnosis are.
Sure. Traumatic TBI is known as traumatic brain injury. The common word for it is actually concussion or mild traumatic brain injury, sometimes called MTBI. And whenever someone gets their head hit, either in a car accident, in the military, in a wide variety of sports, elderly slips and falls, people can hit their head. And even if they don't hit their head, but they're just jostled from a car accident, they can actually have some level of traumatic brain injury or TBI. And that becomes a big problem.
Gotcha. And how, to date, what are the current solutions to diagnose the severity of the head trauma or the symptoms people are experiencing?
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges is the current sort of standard of care is really just something called a Glasgow Coma test, which is a fancy set of words that really mean how many fingers am I holding up? What day of the week is it? Who's the president of the United States? Let me check your eye reflexes and let me check, your elbow reflexes. And that's a very subjective way of testing. Some people are better at it than others, but even at the best of best hospitals, trauma and level centers, it's been shown in studies that it's 56% accurate, even under the best conditions. So the standard of care is really not all that good. And there's no other way other than long tests that take 4 to 5 hours to determine whether someone has a high level of these biomarkers that we can test in 90 seconds. So that's really the only standard of care now. And then therefore, almost everybody who goes to the hospital gets a CT scan. But a CT scan doesn't test for traumatic brain injury. It only tests for a brain bleed. And that really is only 8% of the entire people who show up. So a lot of people are getting unnecessary radiation from CT scans, and a lot of people are getting really, unnecessary trips to the hospital, really to prevent that 8%.
So if we can go back, a lot of our viewers are athletes, coaches, youth sports advocates.
Mm-hmm.
So could you share with us, you said you have your TBIT is a solution to diagnose within 90 seconds, because to us, instead of a 4 to 5 hour test that's more accurate, we can have that accuracy in a minute and a half to get back out to play if we're safe. That's really valuable.
Sure. So really what we're doing is we're taking a set of tests that have been developed over the last 20 to 30 years called an ELISA assay. And it's a biochemistry-based test. It's a test that takes a trained technician a long period of time and some very expensive equipment to perform. And we're putting it onto a digital assay, which means that we can put it really on a chip that's the size of the end of this pen. And it's a tiny little chip that is impregnated with a nanowire, and the nanowire has an antibody on it that attracts that particular protein. So in a simple way, we can do what a 4 or 5 hour research test that's very expensive, we can convert it into a very affordable test and be done in just 90 seconds.
Wow, that's amazing. And where was that nanotechnology developed?
Well, the original technology was actually developed here in Massachusetts at Harvard University in Cambridge, and that they did a lot of really fantastic research. And then they patented those, and we have exclusive rights to those patents and fully paid up royalties. We really have sort of cornered that market. But on top of that, we did 5 to 6 years of research in developing and optimizing this nanowire circuit technology to be able to do it rapidly. And so that optimization has resulted in a lot of trade secrets and know-how, but it's also resulted in some additional patents that we just filed recently with the patent and trademark organization.
So you mentioned the intellectual property from Harvard is royalty free and is not licensed, but rather owned by you guys.
Yes.
How common is it to reach an agreement with a university like that? Because
Yeah.
I'm new to this, but I
Sure.
mostly see licensing agreements
Yeah.
and not just full outright ownership.
Right. So, licensing agreements are fairly common with universities. University hospitals such as Harvard has, really extensive research in a wide variety of areas. But it's a bit of a, needle in a haystack. There's a lot of things that are worthy of publication and worthy of patenting, but may not translate into something that is commercially viable. And so that's what BioDirection has done over the last several years, is really taken the research and converted it into something that's really viable and commercially available. So that's what we look to do this year, is to bring it to the marketplace.
Gotcha. And that is, you guys are currently pending FDA approval, correct?
Correct. So what we have done is we're about to start a clinical trial that will actually feed into our FDA approval, and then submit to the FDA. The benefit there is that we have something called breakthrough designation, which very few companies get. It means that we can have a lot of conversations with the FDA about our clinical trial, the details of that clinical trial, and share that information with them and have a back and forth exchange more than just a single meeting. And it also gives us a leg up on getting national reimbursement, which is also very important in adoption. So we feel that this would give us sort of a faster track, if you will, to get to the market. And then we don't even have to do that for the European launch. We can submit and finalize our CE mark and start selling this product in Europe this summer.
And for the viewers, the CE mark is the European clearance.
Correct.
So this is super interesting. From my perspective, I was immediately interested for the sports use case, but as a business, obviously it's much bigger elsewhere. Can you explain why this is valuable to hospitals and why they would be excited to bring your product on in-house?
Sure. So the initial target market is exactly that, just emergency medical centers, trauma one medical centers, and emergency centers throughout the world, but particularly here in the United States. Some of these centers see 10, 20, and even 30 head traumas a day in a single day, and it actually sometimes goes up. And as I said before, sports gets a lot of time and attention, but it is only one of the many segments. Elderly slips and falls is one of the major ones. But the real power of the technology is that it's in a handheld device. So this device is really, this small. And it comes with a cartridge that's about the size of a business card.
Okay.
So this kind of technology would enable a lot of ease of use in the emergency room. But the power of it is that after we get FDA clearance, we'll go back and resubmit to do something called a CLIA waiver. And that really means that a layperson can get the same result as a nurse in the hospital in the emergency department. And if we're able to prove that, which we think we can do, because the device is very simple to use, we'll be able to bring it to first responders, to car accidents. We'll bring it to elderly care facilities. We'll be able to bring it to coach on the side of a football field, a basketball game, anywhere really. We can bring it out, deploy it into the military. All of these areas where the accidents happen, because when it comes to traumatic brain injury, knowing on the spot whether somebody has an elevated level of biomarker and therefore a TBI or a traumatic brain injury is really important to know, because that can help you inform whether they need to go home and take it easy, whether they can go back into the game, or whether they need to get to the hospital right away in an ambulance. Those are all very different outcomes that could be informed with the right levels of testing and information from a cartridge that just looks like this.
Yeah. when I was first introduced to you guys, I thought for everywhere you see a defibrillator or an AED machine, you should see your device as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Tell us, so this is not your first experience with medical device startups. Let's transition to your role as a founder, as a executive and leader of these early stage companies. What's some of your background in it and some of your learnings that have helped you now with BioDirection?
Sure, absolutely. Well, so I'm, I've been in medical devices for about 33 years. I started off at Boston Scientific in the very early days, back when it was a small company called Meditech, and I worked with the founder to really develop new technologies that are on the marketplace today. I later on went to a number of startup companies where they were pre-IPO and, went through their IPO. And then I founded my own company in prostate cancer surgery to do nerve detection. So a wide variety of medical device companies. I've built companies from, the teens and millions to, about 50, 60 million. So I've built worldwide teams and I've grown. But my background is really mechanical engineering. I studied a bit pre-med, and I also studied, entrepreneurship, MBA. And so those are the three areas that really excite me. Whenever business and technology and medicine come together, I'm really happy. But for the most part, I've been involved in a wide variety of startup companies and really helped accelerate their growth. But I've never been in a company like this one where there are strategics knocking on our door on a regular basis. So, small companies like ours, we build up our business, and very often we're on the market for a long time, and then somebody sees the value in us and then potentially acquires or licenses our technology. I have a feeling, just based on the amount of attention that I get today, that a lot of that will happen earlier in our course than most companies.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us with all that attention.
Sure.
So,
You bet.
no, it's honestly, it's very exciting stuff, and I'm actually excited to see it in the locker room. So, let's turn now. We got some questions from our viewers, if you don't
Sure.
mind.
Great. Yep.
So Theo H asked, how responsive is the FDA? They're in the news a lot right now about pushing through a coronavirus vaccine, et cetera.
Sure, absolutely. So, certainly the FDA, has a lot of priorities, and obviously, COVID-19 is a very important area of interest, and they're going to spend a lot of time and attention. But I do believe that they will have plenty of resources to take care of products like ours. The test for COVID-19 is actually an area of interest of ours. And so we're doing some skunk works and some research to determine whether or not we can actually adapt the COVID-19 onto our test so that we could have a 90-second test there. Now, that's not far along as our traumatic brain injury test, but with some of the investments that the government is doing and some of the new stimulus packages, it might be very possible to be able to release an additional assay based on a chip that looks about this size. And this could become very important because testing really needs to be done on a diagnostic level at the point of injury or point of care. So when it comes to COVID-19, if you want to get into a stadium where there's hundreds of thousands of other people, you might need a screening test to make sure that you don't have the flu or some kind of virus. Yeah. So since our technology is really a platform technology and we can adapt it to a wide variety of different ailments, it opens up the door for us, not only on COVID-19. But to address the question, I believe that the FDA will have enough resources because we've already spent a lot of time with them to review, our application.
So when you describe yourself as a platform technology, how does that go into realizing the evolution of your company? And do you see yourself ultimately being acquired or listing? And also for our viewers, we had two early stage entrepreneurs on earlier this week. If you could give some perspective of where you're at as a company in terms of funding, staff, that just a general sense.
Yeah, sure. So, we're an early stage company. Our company has entirely been funded by private equity. And we partner with Shepard Kaplan and Krochek, which is also here in Boston. And, they've really been our lead investor and been a big promoter of our technology. They So really, the companies can been entirely funded by high net worth individuals who've taken and understood. And many of them are in the sports arena. Many of them are in the emergency department arena. A lot of them are physicians, and some are even in the real estate space. But they all have something in common. They all very typically have a connection toward traumatic brain injury and the need for having a rapid diagnosis. And to answer your first question, the fact that we're a platform technology, so this is the first cartridge of many that we can develop. And inside is we have a nanowire chip in it. And that nanowire chip can be, attached a wide variety of antibodies to attract a wide variety of proteins in the blood. So people have been studying, protein biomarkers for 20 or 30 years. So it's very common for people to come to us and say, we've been studying this for many years, but there's no rapid way of testing for it. And there's a real big need. And so we add it to our list of opportunities. Just like when COVID comes around, we can also potentially test for a protein associated with the virus or any future virus that may happen. So we can adapt this. But we chose traumatic brain injury, number one, because the founder, I'm not the founder of the company. I'm actually the current CEO, president and CEO. But the founder, Brian McGlynn, his vision was really originally to help the military and to help the military decide whether, if someone's near in close proximity to a bomb blast, should we redeploy them the next day or not? And having a definitive test to be able to measure that is really critical. And that is one of the challenges that we have. And you can see a picture of our nanowire chip, and we can attach a wide variety of magnets, if you will. We call them antibodies, but these antibodies attract whatever protein we want to go to next. So that's why it makes it a platform technology. We just went after traumatic brain injury because it was so big in the military and such a large market to go after.
That's really interesting. So one more question from the audience. Todd Barnes asks, how do you think a device like this would change the way concussions are handled in the NBA and college?
Sure, absolutely. So today, right now, typically people, whether they're in the NFL or in the NBA, they'll either go to the back locker room or they'll go to a blue tent and get tested using the Glasgow Coma test. So the physician or the trained person will go there and ask them a number of questions, check their eye reflexes, but it's highly subjective. In the future, someone will basically take a quick finger stick of blood, put a drop of blood behind this blue cap and insert it into our device. And 90 seconds later, they will know what to do next. And that will be very, very informative and very helpful. Because today, a lot of players, just because of concussion protocol, automatically get pulled out of the game when they might be able to go back in. And in other cases, if they really go back into the game, but they really have some level of damage, they're eliminating that permanent damage that can occur. So let me be clear. There are clear studies that show that even if someone has mild traumatic brain injury and they go back into the military field or go back to the playing field and they still have that damage, they can do permanent damage that can result in memory loss or even anxiety and depression in the future. And if that's repeated over and over again, like it is in, for example, football, it can be a big deal.
Yeah, and so before you jumped on, when we were trying to get you on live, I referenced the test that we do with the Nuggets, and this is the same test I've done since Duke. And what's too bad is you actually have players bomb the baseline test just in the event that, say, you're in the playoffs in a big game and you do take a knock to the head, then it's easier to pass this. So, it's not good. But this is obviously a better solution. So, we still, although you're not the founder of BioDirection, we know you have been a repeat founder. So we appreciate you coming on Founder Fridays.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got
it. Could you leave our viewers, fellow entrepreneurs, people starting their own journeys or in the moment, some advice that you have from all your experience?
Sure. So, after working on a wide variety of companies and either starting them or being there at the very beginning of them and riding them through the success, obviously it takes, like anything in life, it takes really good personal connections with the right people. So networking and leveraging your network in a proper way is really, really important. Obviously, having strong connections to finance, like we have a relationship with SKK, has been really instrumental to our growth, for example, at BioDirection. And then persistence. There's a million people who will tell you you can't do something. And so you have to be a little bit really persistent and almost a little bit thick-headed when it comes to knowing what you want, knowing what is truth, being objective about it, and driving to that hoop, right? So that's, you have to be gutsy if you want to be in the entrepreneurial business, particularly in medical devices. So knowing good science, knowing the truth from fiction, and pursuing your passion is what it's all about. And I imagine almost any field is that way.
Well, this is awesome, man. Again, Sharad, I appreciate you coming on. I'm glad we've been connected. I told our team docs and trainers to tune in, so hopefully they were watching. I want to give them a shout out. We do, with the Nuggets, have the best, sports health group, so I'm very proud of that. And they're looking forward to seeing this device in action.
We as well. And we look forward to really helping a lot of patients throughout the world.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Sharad.
Thank you very much. Great.